Hey everybody, welcome once again to Rise of the GM, where today we are joined by co-host Evan Bright to talk about a Mech RPG Lancer. We're going to talk about a convicted beggar, we're going to talk about a domino, and a whole lot more here on Rise of the GM. Well, hey guys, that was me trying to squeeze everything into that intro when I realized I didn't know exactly what I was going to be bringing up, but we got it all in there, and it's going to be all of that and more. We have Evan Bright co-hosting with us here today. How you doing, Evan?
Hello, doing very well, and Happy New Year, guys.
Yeah, Happy
Evan,
New Year.
Tell us just in a few words, who are you and what are you about? You're like, well, that's really open-ended.
Who am I? I'm Evan Bright. I've been, a GM / tabletop role player for about 20 years, and I'm a Midwestern dude like our fellow hosts here.
A Midwestern dude who is the one who would come to my house every week with an armful of new games that I had never seen and be like, hey guys, you want to try this game? And we're like, yes, please. And he'd set down this game and we'd get really excited. And then the next week he'd come back with another. And I remember you coming with a really big box once and you opened it and there were mechs in there. It was a board game. What was the name of that one? Do you remember?
Probably Mechs versus Minions, perhaps.
That might be it.
That sounds about right. I think
it had cool mechs in it that you would actually move around the board. I think everybody would kind of put in their movement at once. Then you would do things, and I really liked it. Made me think of today because we're going to be talking about mechs, although an RPG, not a board game. And we'll get to that here in a moment. But as always, we're going to have Evan sit in as we go through our encounter starter of the day, an encounter that you can drop into a game. And we're going to have Adam, and I'm not sure which way he is on my screen, so I'm just going to point both ways. Adam is going to read that for us. So Adam, what's today's encounter starter?
Yeah, we're working at a Eureka again. And again, Evan, thanks for being on here. Really glad you could join us today. So this is Eureka again by Gnome Stew. And this is called The Convicted. A beggar roams the nearby territories clothed in rags and carrying a scroll. It's containing the teachings of a good deity. The beggar offers to work for food, shelter, and simple goods. The services he provides are those of a highly educated person, things like calligraphy, bookkeeping, translations, and the beggar's fees are not even a tenth of what others would charge for the same work. Still, no one will hire the beggar, and he's driven away by all who encounter him. The beggar is a former priest of a local good deity who was framed by the current keepers of the nearest temple. The beggar is now an outcast, and no one will help him or hire him out of disgust at his alleged crime. Meanwhile, the current temple keepers are trying to smuggle religious artifacts to a nearby buyer in order to fatten their own pockets. The PCs may be charged by the good deity to vindicate the beggar, or the beggar may give aid to the PCs out of kindness after they've been wounded. Regardless, once the PCs are associated with the beggar, they become outcasts as well. The PCs witness a drunken group of mercenaries bullying the beggar. This will help establish the true nature of him, for he will not fight back. The PCs can defend the beggar or watch him be humiliated. Shortly after that, a group of assassins disguised as a circus troupe hired by the temple keepers to kill the beggar, and the PCs attack them in broad daylight. They use acrobatics and exotic beasts to assail the PCs, while a knife thrower focuses her attacks on the beggar. The troupe possesses clues as to where the smuggling operation is located. Finally, the smugglers and temple keepers will meet at the local docks. Here, the PCs can vindicate the beggar as they fight their way through the evil smugglers and treacherous priests in order to stop a departing ship from setting sail with the artifacts. The most important aspect of this plot is to make the beggar a likable and sympathetic character. Your players will find the vindication of the beggar to be more rewarding if you genuinely want to help him. So that is The Convicted.
So I was telling the guys in here, I was trying to find the character. I've actually used this NPC in the current campaign that we're in. Any guesses at all, Adam? Evan, I don't think you were. Were you in the dormant mind at the beginning?
Briefly, I think so. Yes, I was a scion, I think, that enjoyed summoning an astral construct.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe you've encountered this one too. Did that ring any bells to either one of you?
My guess is there it was the he was a priest, and when we went into his house, he had split himself into two.
Yes, you're exactly right. Father
Okay.
Dominic something.
Yep, Dominic.
What was his last? Anyway, Father Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually split this one into a couple places. So he was a priest that had been convicted, thrown out of his priestly duties, and they said he had done stuff. And you remember there were other priests there making fun of him and jeering, and guardsmen.
Right, yeah.
And then I kind of added that he had split himself so that he wouldn't give away where this girl Sylvia was. That's obviously not part of this. But then later, if you remember, and this would have been a part Evan did not get to be part of because it happened after him. But when Mira was at the docks, and there was this trying to get the Wrathstone out by shipping it out and all this kind of stuff. So I split that into two, but that was originally going to be that first temple. I gave you the guy's name. You guys never followed up on it, never did anything with him.
Right.
So he never got to be the one who was smuggling relics out. It ended up being another place in the story, but this one was used there. This idea that we had a priest who knew that the high priest was doing bad things, and so they blackballed him unjustly. They accused him and got him looking like a fool so that no one would listen to him or take him credibly. And of course, in this case, he knew that they were taking these young kids and doing this test on them with the bread to see, and he knew Sylvia was something special, so he hid her. That was not in this one, but yeah, so that had been used. And this is just an example. I think it's important for you GMs to know that when I read that, there was a spark of, okay, this priest who looks like maybe insane, maybe schizophrenic, whatever, out on the street. He has been accused, and now people make fun of him. And I latched onto that part and used it in the story how I wanted to use it for my own ends. And that's what these NPCs are really for. You find the part that really kind of grabs you as, hey, I need a player character. Oh, here's one, or a non-player character. Here's one that I can use, and then I'm going to adapt it to my needs. And that's what I did very much with this character. But there's other ways you could use this. Did anything come up for either one of you as you either listened to this or as I talked about Father Dominic, whatever his last name was?
Evan, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I was thinking more in line of how I would use this depending on like what's the party structure? Are they nomads that roam from town to town, so they're not staying in one place for very long? If so, then I need to like scrunch this really tight, maybe take out a few pieces and make it super urgent. Like maybe he's beaten up by some ruffians initially. He thanks the party and says, "Oh, by the way, I know that the church is smuggling goods like at midnight tonight. Can you help me out with that and clear my name?"
Yeah.
But if the party like has a base of operations or someplace that they go to between adventures, then I might like chop this up into pieces and sort of sprinkle them out. Like level 2, they meet this guy. Level 4, the circus assassins happen, and then maybe level 6 or level 8. At that point, the party learns through maybe some other avenue that that there's smuggling afoot.
Yeah,
Smuggling.
I think that's a really good point of just like the pacing. And I know there's actually we have an episode not too long ago. It's or not too far in the future is what I'm trying to say. That's going to talk about pacing, but that's a really good thought of like what are the PCs doing? How long are they spending here? And you can like either like stretch or shrink, like you said. I think it's really cool. I like the idea of them coming into town, because sometimes I feel like groups they're coming into a new village or a new town, and it's kind of like you don't always just want it to be like, well, we're going to seek out the tavern the first time, and first thing we do is go to that. Or I don't know, that one group we played in, it was like every time it was like, let's go to the library, like first time. I don't know.
That's our group, right? Everybody
Yeah,
else
yeah.
goes to a tavern. We're like, let's go to the library.
Yeah, let's make the GM make up 1,000 books to tell us about. But I like that idea of that even being like an instigating thing of you come into town like that and see this beggar priest being beat up. I was a little confused. I actually had to take a double take as I was reading that, because when I jumped to the circus performers attacking them, I was like, "Oh, did I get onto another one? Nope, that's the right thing." So I think like the busting up for me, um, that's another one of those where I feel like there's so many multiple pieces of that it would work better if this wasn't just like the straight line thing. But yeah, they're coming, they're doing some adventuring in the region, they come back. Now there's this, it's developed a little farther. More people have an idea that they're connected. So now there's this being ostracized by the community, or at least by this temple, and being able to build into that. But I like the person in the know that can be kind of a quest giver aspect of this. I think that's a good like little tool to have in your back pocket as a GM, is if even if the group's kind of maybe floundering a little bit about like what do we do next, those NPCs can kind of play that role too of bringing in a little more action, a little more story there. So I think he's very well used, and it's cool to see that having been played out, in a different way. So it's cool.
Yeah. And like I said, in my case, I left out the circus performers. I did have some guards bugging him, but I had the beggar priest early with the quest of you've got to protect this girl, and then it wasn't until the whole first group got killed off and Dormant Mind 2.0 started up that the whole relic
Yeah.
thing happened. So
Yeah.
you can really split that up. Okay. Well, Adam, we have a main topic here that is going to be led kind of by you and our co-host, because I've never played this, but I'm extremely interested in hearing about this. Why don't you set us up, and you and Evan can take it for our main topic here.
Yeah. So Evan and myself and Eric, who has been on here prior, we play. What do you say? Every other Monday or every 3 or so, if when we can, try to get together. And sometimes it's longer, but get together and kind of play short time on those times, and just play different games. And Lancer is one of these that we've played in the last year or so together. Evan ran this for us, and it was a really, really fun time. I had never experienced a game that was like the mech idea, where we are, like people, but I'd say the majority of that game was kind of played within the suit, and I'm going to let Evan talk a little more about that. But that was a really fun experience, because I think it really has a cool way of making you feel like that's the thing you're doing. Just the way that the character sheet's made and the way the rules function. And again, I don't want to step on the stuff Evan's going to talk about, but so I was really excited to talk about this, let Evan kind of share how he got into that and gaming, and have wanted, Evan, you to be on for some time now. So I'm glad you could join us with that. So kind of before we get into Lancer though, like I'd love to hear just kind of your story a little bit more about how'd you get into gaming, role playing specifically? What's that looked like? What have you kind of played? Just to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself in that.
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I was big into like Nintendo, Super Nintendo gaming, and one of my favorite games was Final Fantasy II, which
Oh yeah.
we now know is actually Final Fantasy IV, but at the time it was Final Fantasy II,
Mhm.
and it was a Japanese RPG where you got to play as a Dark Knight, turning into a paladin and finding friends and saving the world, and it was just fantastic fun. Um, then I got into sort of like board games, card games, Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
And then a bomb dropped, which in 2000, D&D third edition
Oh yeah.
Oh,
was
yes.
released. And I was right time, right place.
Mm,
I picked that up, and me and my high school buddies, we muddled through how to actually play in an RPG, and I was very quickly thrust into the GM position
mm,
um, from playing. And ever since then, I've had ups and downs with role playing. Sometimes I favor the board games, card games. Other
mm,
times I favor the RPGs. So I different rule sets. I've been on an eternal quest to find my favorite game,
yeah.
my favorite RPG game, because everyone I played, it's like I like a lot of it, but it's just not quite what I'm wanting. Um,
Mm,
so uh, so I've played since then D&D fourth edition, Pathfinder first and second edition. Uh, Tried some Call of Cthulhu, which is a D100 based,
mhm,
GURPS, which is 3d6, some Ironsworn, which is roll like 2d10s or d10s and d6s and try to accumulate successes. So I've dabbled in quite a few. Still haven't
mm,
found the perfect one, but Lancer
yeah.
comes pretty close, I think, for my
Cool.
sci-fi itch.
Nice. Yeah.
Which one was your least favorite? I just have to know.
Ooh, least favorite. Oh, put me on the spot.
Here, I'll go ahead and answer
And I
mine,
don't.
and maybe it'll help trigger yours.
Uh,
Fourth edition D&D. Man, it just seemed like every character became the same thing. You had I love the idea of the at wills and the encounters and
Mm,
but everything every time you would do like one of your powers, it'd be like add 2, subtract 2. Add, and it's like that was like what every power, no matter what you were, if you were a ranger, if you were a wizard, you play this thing and it's like +2 to this. And it's like, man, this is the
mhm.
worst. Everybody feels the same, even though we're different. Anyway, so that was mine.
Barry in the chat said, "I knew Matthew was going to say that."
It's true.
The
It's
story,
true.
though, I
uh,
enjoyed our story of fourth edition for sure.
Oh
I'll always
yeah,
remember
yeah. Our
Primidia.
stories were awesome because, well, obviously.
I'm actually going to say Warriors of Virtue. Is my least
Oh,
favorite. Yeah. It's a
we say
spicy
that because
take.
his brother was so into that. So fight later.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I only had one session of it. I think it
Mm.
was my very first role playing session.
Oh, wow.
And it was not what I had expected. Coming
Mm.
from a board gaming, card gaming background, I was expecting, you'll at least be prompted for when your turn is. But I think in whoever was running it, you really had to interject and get their attention if you ever wanted to do anything.
Yeah, right.
um, so it was not the style of GMing for me.
Mhm. So I know you've like listened to the stuff we've talked through, and I feel like this kind of flows into that for me. We've talked about 8 types of fun, and we've talked about like the entertainer, facilitator, storyteller kind of things. When you maybe were listening to that, or as I say those things, um, where do you feel like you kind of fit into those as a like on a personal level?
For the types of fun, fellowship or friendship or socializing, I can't remember
Mhm.
the exact terminology, but being around a bunch of friends, just
Mhm.
hanging out and doing something, that's a key one that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Fantasy is another. Like I enjoy well-built board games, even if their premises are like about getting bird points by matching eggs.
Mm.
But if if you
Wingspan.
switch the theme, like keep all of the mechanisms, but it's about wizards collecting dragon eggs, that will get my interest much higher.
Yeah. Yep.
Have you played Wingspan?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't remember how it's actually played.
I actually saw a thing on
uh,
Instagram a couple of days ago that was called Wormspan, and it was dragons, but it was the Wingspan game. And I don't know if it was a joke or if it was like a new like version, but I was like, that does look pretty cool. So
oh, like a reskin. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
So
like it's
if
dragons
there were
instead. So
two identical games, but one of them has dragon pictures and the other has bird pictures, I'm going to vastly enjoy the dragon pictures more.
Yeah. Barry says he thinks it's legit. By the way, I'm levying the chat right now, so it's awesome.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then challenge. I enjoy like winning by the skin of my teeth or our teeth, playing as a party, as a player, or throwing challenges to the players and them narrowly achieving victory. It's a good feeling. And well, when they've like legitimately earned it, I'm not pulling my punches and they manage to succeed. And then as far as like the three GM roles, I was pondering that for a while, and I can't really maybe entertainer a little bit more. I do a lot more virtual gaming than in person, so I try to do what I can, like scooping up images and stuff like that for NPCs and monsters and nice looking maps to immerse people in the fantasy.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like I've noticed that when we've played, that's a thing that comes out. I wondered about the facilitator for you, since the quest to look for your favorite game, kind of thing, if the rule systems kind of grabbed you, as well too. So that's cool. Awesome. Well, let's talk Lancer a little bit here. How did you originally hear about that and kind of get into that game?
Well, like I said, I'm on an eternal quest.
Yeah.
I'm Don Quixote or maybe Captain Ahab, searching for that one perfect RPG that I know I want to my forever game. And so doing some digging, I don't know, probably a Reddit thread or maybe an Ian World thread of some sort of people just recommending different RPGs. It topped one of the list for a sci-fi RPG.
Nice.
And I've enjoyed a little bit of Starfinder. I've enjoyed a little bit of Traveler, another sci-fi RPG, but I hadn't found a sci-fi RPG that really hit for me. So when I read that this was about being in big stompy mechs, punching other mechs in the face or blowing them up, that caught my attention. And also the tactical nature that was brought to the forefront, and it's almost board gamey in a way, but you're focused on your one dude, and your one dude gets better at blowing mechs up. So
yeah. So for people who have like not seen this game at all, could you do a quick kind of run through about like how the game plays and those types of things?
sure. So the core rule book sort of describes the campaign structure as you're either doing downtime actions, you are just your pilots, you're palling around with your fellow party members, or maybe you're getting quote unquote quests or missions, interacting with the world. That is downtime, and the rules are very light in that sense. You have very few like numerical doodads that sort of um, influence how well you do your stuff. It's more free flowing. And then there's the mission itself. And that's when your boss, your superiors, or maybe like just your party in general is faced with some sort of conundrum. A pirate lord is threatening a village, or maybe a planet killer is coming in. Something something is coming up, and it requires some surgical force that only your PCs are able to do. So you learn about the general mission premise, what threat you need to neutralize, or what uh, MacGuffin you need to rescue from something or other. Um, and then you build a mech. You go to the build a mech workshop, or maybe you have a sort of signature mech that you've already prepared, and you love how its weapons and systems and other sorts of things you've pre-selected. You like how it works, and you're just going to fly it regardless of what the mission is. And then it turns into sort of a tactical game where the GM throws some bad guys, gives you a mission parameter, and you duke it out. And how that mission turns out, the GM will let you know, what the next steps are.
That's cool. I really liked that aspect of it. Of like there was a combat situation that didn't feel too alien to me from like playing other role playing games, but the fact that there were a lot of times that that mission aspect of it where it's like protect these batteries from being destroyed by these raiders, or destroy this. We needed to destroy a specific thing, or we needed to get just across the battlefield because we're running away from this giant thing that's back here. I appreciated that being. I think it added an extra element, and I wondered how much of that is like core game, and how much of that was like your kind of influence in that when we played.
It's very much core game. So the core rule book for Lancer, the player side stuff is free. I'll bring that up right now. But the GM, if you want the GM stuff, that does cost some money. So if you do plunk down the dollars for the GM facing core rules, it does describe different. They call them sit reps or situation reports. So instead of every battle being a team versus team, last man standing type of thing, it'll describe here's how you run an escort mission. You'll want to like have, maybe 1.5 to 2 times more enemy forces, but bring them out in waves, and maybe have a time crunch. So you only have 6 to 8 rounds to accomplish this mission. And if you don't, well, you're still alive, but maybe the person you're charged to escort kicks the bucket. And it describes I think six or eight different types of like win-loss type uh, scenarios in general that you can sort of apply, and gives you like, here's a good time frame, here's a good way to like parcel out your reinforcements so you don't like crush the players on round 2. Um,
Here's a question for you. What does death look like in this game? I remember, like I loved mech video games. I never saw a mech RPG, but in these mech video games, I remember one I got on Xbox where when your guy would be dead, you actually parachute out. You're this little guy and you're running around. You're like a little human and you're running around these mechs stomping around. And you got to not be stomped, because if that happens, you're truly dead. And then I also remember I worked at Best Buy for a season of my life, and it was when a game, I think it was called Battle Mech or something, came out. It was one of these crazy ones that had like a controller that was 3 sides with 46 buttons or something, 2 joysticks. And when your mech started to fall, you actually had to flip up this little cover and hit an eject button before it hit the ground. And if you didn't, you were done, and you had no saves, and you had to start the complete game over again if you didn't eject in time.
Wow.
And so it was pretty cool. Mud would hit up, and you'd have to turn on wipers with an actual wipers button on your mech.
Wow,
and
that's crazy.
it was really cool. But both of those had kind of a unique way of like, this is what true death looks like, or what happens when your mech. What does it look like in this game if you don't make it?
So you have maybe not one-ups, but you have stages of degradation first before you actually blow up. So your hit points aren't the entirety of your health. once you're depleted down to 0 hit points or negative, that's when you take a structure point of damage. And I think everybody has 4 structure points, or typically has 4 structure points. And once that is taken, then you do some sort of roll, and then some random thing goes wrong with your mech. So it might be you're just discombobulated. So like you're taking a minus D6 on your rolls for the next round. Other times you might be losing a random weapon mount or a random system. Uh, and rarely, if you roll, I think double ones or triple ones, as you lose your second or third structure, then you're blown up. But it's not the end. It's not the end for you, because you are still your pilot. You still have a pea shooter. It can conceivably damage an enemy mech, but you're limited in the number of actions you can do. So instead of the like standard move bonus type action sequence in 5th edition, it's you get 2 quick actions and your move, and the 2 quick actions can be zap zap. So you can zap twice, but as a human, you got to spend all your actions doing a single pea shooter zap. That's just the way it is when you're a little human. Now, if you're squashed at that point, I think when you reach 0, you're considered down and out. So the first time you're knocked to 0 hit points as a human, then you're just knocked unconscious conveniently. And then I think the third time you are like flattened when you were at 0 hit points. I think that's when you're dead. But in the like setting itself, you just download the memories you had at the beginning of the day into a flash clone.
Nice.
And you're good to go.
And I
So yeah,
assume
death.
I was going to say, and I assume when you download, you can choose different kinds of mechs. I'm assuming there's like big, heavy mechs, and there's light mechs, some with jump jets, some with different kinds of guns.
Yeah, this is what I found really neat from a player side. So I was also, so not only did I GM, but since I had so few players, it's built for a party of 3 to 5. So I made a GM PC just to round out the party and be as much of a heal bot as I could. So I got to see a little bit of the player side of things. So everyone starts with a basic mech. It's a jack of all trades. It's got a little bit of damage reduction. It's not too fast, not too slow. And its core power, which is usable once per mission, is generally useful. You get like an extra D6 on all your D20 rolls. Pretty nice. As you get levels, you're not leveling in a class. You instead acquire what's called license levels. You can sort of think of it as oh no, like you're getting an additional security clearance or a higher security clearance. So you're able to acquire more doodads. Each license level you get an optional weapon or an optional system, or maybe it's a pair of weapons or a pair of systems. You're not obligated to use them, but they might be nice to have depending on the next mission that you run. But as you get these license levels, if you put 2 sort of in the same like company, same mech, that unlocks a new mech body for you to use. It's not necessarily better than the starting one, but depending on the mission, it might rock. So I think Eric chose one that was like super small, super fast. I had a heck of a time hitting him. His agility or his armor class equivalent, I think it's called evade, but his level was through the roof. It was tough for me to shoot him. Whereas like I picked a big bulky like 4-legged dog looking mech that that shot drones all over the place. So before the mission, you were able to, like I said, you can either like come up with your perfect mech. It's your one and only. You'll never part from it. Or if you're into like character creation, or character building in general, or you just want to, like, what the mission is, you want to min max for it, like, it's escort, so maybe you want more defense or more speed, or you're going into space, so you need your jump jets, then the system assumes that you have a 3D printer that can 3D print a giant mech for you.
Yeah. If you like to have varied experience and want those options, it is a great game for that. Like I remember the first time I like opened that up and started scrolling through the possibilities of like these different chassis or like just all the things. I was like amazed at just the sheer amount of that and the varied experience that you can have. Like one of the things Evan was talking about with Eric's kind of small mobile. I think he had jump jets on that too, so he could like shoot way across the battlefield. Meanwhile, I was like super slow, just chonking along, waiting to kind of defend. And it was interesting to see those different kind of things. So it was really cool. I will say the most fear I had in that game, because it's related to your question, Matthew, is there was a building that had fallen in, and we had to get down into it to grab, like, I think it was like a flash drive or some info, and I had to walk my mech up to the building, get out of the mech, and go in it during this like battle that was happening. And I was terrified the entire time, like my little skin body, like I'm like, do this quick. So that was interesting.
The feel of vulnerability after
Yeah, for
being in
sure.
a huge mech
Yeah.
suit.
Yeah. Yep. So kind of coming in a little more like even one level closer mechanically, just kind of like the crunchiness of the game, Evan. So we're in a battle, and you started to talk about the quick actions and things. What is that? And we have a character sheet, kind of a PDF, if we want to pull that up too, Matthew, for you all watching on video. Can you talk through that a little more, even Evan, of just like the kind of the way the rule system works for like the battles and things like that?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so if you've played a D&D like game, it will become second nature. You can move your speed, and then you have two quick actions that you can do quick things with, or you can smush them together and do a longer thing. A longer thing would be using a super heavy type weapon that's takes a little more oomph to get that going, as opposed to like shooting, two guns, two like little revolver things. Um, there is no initiatives. Well, not there is no rolled initiative. It goes, a hero goes, then a bad guy goes, then a different hero goes, and then a different bad guy goes, and you sort of alternate. So you get to decide round by round, like, does it make more sense for Eric to go first, or does it make more sense for Adam to do his thing first in any given round? Um, and then I as a GM can respond appropriately, like, oh, they didn't move up, so maybe I should scurry my frontliner back, and things like that. Um, so your quick actions are going to be things like, I attack with all the weapons in my mount. Yeah, your mount, or each mech has a number of weapon mounts, and those weapon mounts might hold like a singular thing, or sometimes like maybe a couple of small things. Uh, so one quick action is using a weapon mount to fire. Another is called a boost, which in D&D 5e would be like a dash. You get to move again. Um, you have sort of tech attacks that you can make. So anything within your sensor range, you can either scan it to learn details like what's its weaknesses, what's its defenses like, or what sort of tricks does it have up its sleeve. Um, you could also attempt to hack uh, an enemy mech. Uh, by default, everyone can at least try to invade an enemy mech to make them slow, which means they cannot boost any faster. It adds to their heat You don't want your mech to heat up. And then I think it impairs them as well. So that's an option for all mechs. And then I think the bulk of what you're probably going to be doing is either attacking or um, mechs have a number of system points that you can spend to buy different doodads. Uh, for instance, like some sort of mines or drones might take 2 or 3 system points to put onto your mech, and that it might take a quick action to deploy one of those. Another system might give you a different type of hacking ability. Like I remember Eric's thing had something where he would hack one of my bad guys, and if my bad guy attacked, it would add more heat to that bad guy. So if it ever got too high, it would have to vent out, and when you vent out a mech, it takes additional damage. Um, so you just go back and forth like that. 2 actions and move for a hero, 2 actions and move for a bad guy. Keep alternating until everybody on both sides have gone, and then refresh the round.
I really like that. I've heard that a phrase with board gaming, like the many paths to victory kind of thing. And I felt like that with this game. You mentioned the heat damage. Trying to remember through these, there was like ways you could take damage was heat, and then the HP with the structure damage. Was there other? Was there another way to?
I think those are the only 2
Yeah.
things as a player that you're tracking. So it is a little more complicated than
Mhm.
D&D in that you you do not want to lose hit points, and you do not want to get too hot.
Yeah. Right.
Because like I said, or similar to how if you drop to 0 hit points, if you exceed your heat capacity, then you lose a stress point, and you have 4 of those.
Right.
And if you ever roll multiple ones after losing, 2 or more of that stress, uh, conceivably your mech will fall apart. Well, not
Yeah.
only fall apart, but its core will overload and it will detonate in a round.
Yeah.
So your pilot has to boogie out of there.
Right.
uh, but you might also decide to like manually uh, make your mech go into explode mode. Like if you're on your last legs, I think one of the um, full actions that you can take
Mhm.
is set your core up to explode
Yeah.
if things are that dire.
I was tempted a couple different times with that, but my the deck I ran was interesting with the heat situation. I had some kind of radioactive specialist person that I wanted to be semi hot, but not too hot the whole time. So I'm like leaking radioactivity the whole time. But if I was super hot, it was like helping me to do heat damage and things like that. So I liked the strategy or maybe the tactics of the thing when we would be fighting against other mechs or other things that there was that trying to like even suss out, is it better for me to try to like overheat this person, like what's their weakness, I guess was a big thing of taking a little bit of time scanning with my mech to be like, okay, they're not very good in the heat range, or they're not very their E defense is not very good. So let's attack them electronically to overheat them rather than try to just keep
Mhm.
smashing them or shooting them, because that's going to take a lot longer. So that was really cool to me to see like what's the better tactic in this battle, or like person by person even kind of thing. I liked that a
Yeah,
lot.
exactly. Yeah, and like the mission parameters, you might not want to spend the time to blow up enemy mechs. It might
Right.
suffice for you to just hack them, make them slower, or make them so
Hmm.
they don't hurt you as hard, while you actually do the objective that you're there to do, escorting a
Right.
guy or extracting some MacGuffin.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So if you're looking at this at Lancer, and I know we've mentioned a few things, but if you're going to compare it maybe to a more traditional, let's just say D&D RPG that a lot of people probably listening have played. How do you look at that and be like, okay, these are the similarities, and like, what's the like? These are the really big differences that you're seeing in that.
The similarities, I would say, just the way a fight can play out in like a third edition or fifth edition sort of D&D type system, because the structure is very similar: move, attack, although you can do another attack. It's just that you have more options, so maybe it's more like everyone's a caster in Lancer,
Okay.
because you're expected to have a bag of tricks with the systems that you have chosen to plop into your machine.
Hmm.
So yeah, maybe like imagine every Lancer is a warlock, but you're able to cast 2 spells each round.
Okay.
The differences though is like I don't know, it's with the license level way of leveling, where you're not like a class. It's just like you're picking different abilities you could use
Hmm.
later, or mech bodies you could use. Uh, it's like, I don't know, you're a shapeshifter that can change classes at will.
Yeah.
But if you
I
find your
like the
favorite one,
sound of
then
that.
you can
Yeah.
stick with that.
Yeah, I was thinking that, Matthew. Like, you like to have those like options, and that I think it would fit really well in that realm, because I did like seeing that of I don't know how many sessions we played, but I had stuck with my same kind of chassis the whole time until closer to the end, and then went like this like uber defensive thing that was basically a walking fortress. But I know Eric made a pretty big shift at one point too, just kind of, this isn't working exactly how I wanted it to, but now that I have a new level of certification here, I can just grab this new thing and go. And that
Mhm.
was really cool, just the options that you have with that. Oh, it's a fun one for sure. Um, if you were gonna get into this, Evan, like, if somebody's listening, they're like, "Man, I'd really like to check this out." Like, what are your kind of recommendations for getting into Lancer?
For a GM to get into Lancer, I assume that you will be the only person who would know how to play Lancer. Like, you're going to try to bring it to your group. So I would recommend actually building a character first, perhaps. There's a web application called CompCon.
Mm,
If you go to your search engine of choice and enter CompCon, CompCon, you should find it. It's a nice web tool that will allow you to build a character using the core rule set, and you can even like, it's got some pre-mades in there. So if you want to be a hacker guy, here's some basic hackery things that would be good for your mech. If you want to be like um, an artillerist, here's some nice weapon system combos that'll help you pull that off in combat. Um, so I'd recommend like giving that a look, seeing how a character is formed, or how a pilot and a mech is formed, so you're able to explain that to your players. And then uh, after perusing the core rule book, I'd probably I don't know, maybe recommend you try like a very short, like a one-shot session of like an escort mission. Check out the escort mission, see what its parameters are like,
mm,
and maybe have like 6 NPC mech enemies of like maybe just 2 varieties. There are 30 different NPC sort of monsters, I guess, or mech monsters.
hmm,
That you can choose from, but you can like apply templates, you can apply optional systems for them. I wouldn't recommend like going that far, but just like pick a couple, pick maybe a striker and maybe like an artillerist or something like that. uh, just make sure you have like 4 to 8 of them, and then just see if your players survive, and if they do, come up with like an actual factual premise for them to keep adventuring.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. In the chat, and we actually have a question later that's going to connect with this too, but Barry was asking, what is the tone of the Lancer universe? And later on, there's a question about the tone that you have in your games. Hold off on that, but like just from like core rulebook kind of thing, like what kind of tone do you see with that, Evan?
The tone is mostly variable. Well, it can offer a lot of tone. There is sort of a on the cusp of being a utopia, sort of like central, like the Starfleet sort of central government spanning a lot of stars, but along the edge of the galaxy, there's a lot of lawlessness, mega corporations, evil empires, et cetera, et cetera. So you can run the gamut. I did find in the rule meant to be bigger, but you can play a bunch of jerks if you want. But it reads, we hope that you create narratives and characters that stand against terrible abuses and prejudices. Lancer features no easy aliens to pass these transgressions upon, only other human beings. Humanity alone are the architects of terrible cruelties, but we can also be the architects of better, more just futures. So I think authorial intent is that you're meant to be good guys, and despite maybe the galaxy is in a bad place, you're still able to make a dent in making it a better place. I think that is the intent, but you can run grimmer if you want.
Cool. Awesome. Matthew, you have any questions, or Evan, you got any final thoughts on Lancer before we move on?
I would say this as my observation, and that is from someone who has not played this. I would love to be able to give it a shot to see how it feels as you play it out. Like I said, I've had a lot of fantasy experience, and the only kind of sci-fi experience I had is Starfinder, I think it was, which is still different because you're still picking people who are kind of analogous to someone who has spells or someone who has the Force. You have the lightsaber sorts of characters and that
space elves and space goblins,
right? But it's different. That's a very different thing than mechs, and I've always loved the idea of the mech games, and so this is one I think everybody should try. A little harder maybe if you've never been involved in this. Like Evan said at the beginning when he was talking about how did he get involved, he said, "My friends and I." We just started playing and muddled our way through, and I became the de facto GM. That's the way you learn anything. It's interesting because I do teach technology things sometimes. Light boards with lots of buttons, sound boards with lots of buttons and faders. And it's always true that kids learn quicker because they're not afraid to get on there and push a bunch of stuff, not knowing what they're doing and mess up. Adults will look at it and they're afraid to touch anything because they're afraid they're going to do something wrong. The way to get into any game, whether it's D&D 3.0 or Lancer, is to just say, let's just jump in and start. And we're going to mess up and we're going to muddle through, but we're going to kind of figure it out as we go. And that's one of those things that if you haven't done this, you don't have anybody that has experience, go to those websites that Adam flashed up on the screen down there and just say, you know what? We're going to give this a shot. And this is something that I would like to give a shot. So maybe we'll be doing some muddling soon, unless I can get in on one of Evan's games where he can muddle it I can muddle through his setup. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this. It really does seem like an interesting idea, this RPG that is in mech suits.
Yeah. It's awesome. Fun. It's fun. If you're listening to this and not on the video, there'll be these links will all be up on our socials, specifically on Instagram and Twitter. So, any parting shots, Evan?
Nope. Let's get to the question.
Do it. That's the parting shot. All right. Well,
Thank you.
It's always neat to come on here and have a game that I think this is a neat thing to find games that you've never experienced. And hopefully we can expose you to more of these as we go. And whether it's Lancer here with the mechs, or it's close action with the ships like we had Barry, the guest host, a few sessions ago. I hope you try some of these new things because when you first start, if you first started with D&D, that's great. And D&D will always kind of be a home for you, but don't be afraid to branch out. Don't be afraid. We're going to go ahead, though, and jump to an NPC, which is a more D&D type thing. I don't know. Do you have NPCs in Lancer? This mech is a... I assume.
I didn't in the mini campaign I ran, but yes, you could just use one of the the NPC mech classes instead of a bad guy you could have as an ally. Actually, I think that's there are rules in the downtime system. You can sort of like maybe not hire or sort of use them as a hireling for one of your combats.
Somebody that goes along with, that helps maybe, or maybe the person you escort has some, personality and some quirks as well. Yeah. We're going to talk about an NPC character here that is more for a D&D game, but it is that kind of that same sort of thing. A person who might help you along the way. We're going to be talking about one today called the Domino, right? He's an enigmatic symbol. His appearance. So you got this guy with a red half mask over his eyes and nose that conceals the features of this man. So you don't know exactly what he looks like. He wears dark polished riding boots, leather breeches, padded leather doublet, red line black coat, complete the ensemble. So you can get a picture of this guy, right? And he has a sword and dueling daggers hanging from ornate sheaths at his waist. He's quick-witted with a greeting. He carries on in a very carefree manner. His accent is subtle, and he shows an interest in protecting those of the fairer sex. Sorry, guys. He cares more about protecting the girls. Not only. His personality, underneath this debonair persona, is a steely hardness, though. And if you're around him, you'll see that. He's chivalrous to the extreme and prone to take unnecessary but fanciful risk for his cause. His motivation is dedicated to protecting the innocent and those without means to protect themselves. Ultimately, he seeks to overturn tyranny, but requires allies for such lofty goals. And so the background is important for this character. The background, little is known about the man, but in a few short years, the Domino has become a thorn in the side of the local authority. The peasants revere him and speak his name in hushed whispers, and it's said that he was previously a for-hire mercenary adventurer who turned his back upon a town desperate for assistance. Some people in a town needed somebody, and he's like, not my problem, not my thing. I got other things going on. Turned his back. After their slaughter, the adventurer abandoned his lifestyle and took up the mask of this historical hero, the Domino, as penance. And so now he goes about trying to help those who can't help themselves. I like this kind of character. I always have. And I'm sure you can have something like this as a mech as well. Somebody who, in some part of his life, he was just for himself, just for what he could get. And then a moral dilemma comes after an entire town is slaughtered because he did nothing. Yeah. And now he's laid everything down, and all that money and all that wealth and all that ambition and all that notoriety is not on his radar anymore. Although he still seems to have a flair about him here. So maybe the notoriety part still plays a little bit in this. But he is all about protecting those who can't. And I think these kinds of characters are so easy to do. By the way, milestone, guys, this is our first non-villainous NPC.
Yeah!
It's because we didn't really pay attention when we were randomly doing this, and we chose a whole bunch from like the villains. And now this is our first time having somebody who is admirable, somebody who is honorable, and not like starting you off on some sort of encounter that you didn't intend to rectify a situation. This guy actually can be one who helps you along the way. And I think these kinds of NPCs are important in any game. And it doesn't have to be like this guy in particular, but like an NPC that becomes kind of a helper to your people and has some skill and has some ability. In my Dormant Mind game, there's a girl named Amira. great fighter, almost better fighter than most of our PCs. She's strong. She doesn't necessarily do everything, but when she can come along and help, or when this guy can come along and help, and can even maybe help your characters stay on the moral high ground, because sometimes characters get that desire for money. They get that desire for the things that they want. And sometimes they decide to turn their back on a town. It's like, hey, we really need to go get our main mission. So we don't need to stay here, even though there's werewolves descending on this town. Well, they'll be fine. And then, you have them start to leave, and this guy could be the one who's like, I have suffered such an ill fate before in my life, and I would hate for you to have to live with this. And then, whatever.
Yeah.
The Domino. I don't know how he got his name, the Domino.
Domino. Maybe the domino mask.
Yeah.
What is it?
Like a domino mask, isn't that what they're called? That like the superheroes wear?
Is that what they're called?
I think
I knew that was the name of this. I was in this entire time thinking, okay, it's something like when he starts, then a bunch of things are going to follow, like a domino effect.
Yeah. Oh,
I couldn't figure out I didn't know that a mask like that was called a domino.
I was trying to figure out his outfit. So I have a lot to say, but I don't. Evan, do you have thoughts that come off of the domino before I do that?
Well, I hesitate to introduce GMPCs to throw into a party. So like my initial thought was that if he's going to be a helper, I would probably make him like just provide like legendary action type things for the players. Like if one of the PCs is about to be hit by an attack, maybe they can use a reaction like he flings a dagger at the attacking goblin and subtracts 4 from the attack roll. So it becomes a narrow miss. Or maybe he, as a bonus action, he flings it, or he somersaults behind the enemy that you're facing and provides some flanking bonus. So something like that. So he's not an actual like person who's a sack of hit points that I need to keep track of. He's bonus actions that the PCs get to decide how they use the domino.
That's awesome.
But another part of me, I recently rewatched clips of the Avengers, so now I'm thinking like I probably want to introduce the domino against the PCs at odds almost. Like the PCs, well, at least the parties I tend to run for, they don't ask many questions when they take a mission. So maybe they are working for maybe a crime lord, and they're breaking into a place they shouldn't be breaking into.
Yeah.
And that's when the domino swoops in. What are you guys doing? You shouldn't be opening a place you don't belong to. And they might have a scuffle and hopefully sort out their differences, but there might be bloodshed.
Yeah. That's cool. I love this one. And I don't know if it's because it's not a villain. But
first time.
I don't know if that's, the thing that like opened my brain, but I love the lore like aspect. Like, there's one way you can make use of this just idea is that it is an idea, and it's a legend of the domino. He's said to roam around the hills and come down when you most need him, and even like that, like Robin Hood legend kind of thing of being able to have that out there, I think is a cool, just like world building aspect of there are stories circulating in the world, kind of thing. And he could play a part of that. I love him as like you guys both mentioned kind of a helper person, and in my brain, it's not so much like in battle, or even though I'm like, my mind is a little bit blown, Evan, by the idea of like your party getting their own legendary actions based on a person with them. I love that very much. But like the thing in my brain was almost like a Master Splinter who, he can hold his own, but like maybe he's that like source of wisdom for the characters, or it's like we're just at an impasse, we have no idea what to do, and this experienced adventurer can be someone who like I can still do the thing, but I can also show you the ropes and help you to raise up in that way. I think that would be a really good character for that. And as usual, I know I had a third one, but I can't remember what it was, so maybe that'll come up in a bit. But I like him a lot as a person who can just engage, and that's like a long-term thing for me. I think that's the third piece, was it just being a building situation of maybe they hear about the legend, maybe they see him in action, but they don't really get to interact. Then there is an interaction. Maybe he swoops in and stops them from doing something illegal. And then later he could be even like an advisor for them. I think you could see that kind of person throughout the whole game, and it would be really cool to make use of.
And like Evan said, be very careful introducing an NPC that fights with your people, because you can end up, they're all getting beat down and it's you fighting your monsters with your character, and you're doing everything and your players are sitting there like, man, we suck and this is no fun. And he's having a blast, but we're not doing anything. And you don't want that. That's not what you want your NPCs to be.
For sure. Yeah, very cool. Love it. Well, we have 2 questions tonight, and one of them I kind of mentioned earlier, and it is actually directed at you, Evan. Wataya Hotel knew you were coming, so you kind of answered half of it, but I'm gonna go ahead and read the whole thing here, and we can, maybe there's some more, and then there's the question I asked. But so Wataya Hotel, this is the Haversack Question Pacific Rim Edition. Dear Matthew, Adam, and especially Evan Bright. Evan, this question is for you. Now the questioner has become the questionee. How does it feel? How does it feel?
It feels strange being on this side of the screen. Certainly.
Nice. Just kidding, even though I made you answer. But seriously, my question is this. What kind of tone do you strive for in your Lancer games, and what kind of tone does the core rulebook recommend? I asked out of curiosity because I could see this game ranging from the goofy fun of something like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to the epic action of Pacific Rim, or finally the utterly depressing nature of something like Neon Genesis Evangelion. What are your thoughts on tone in the mech genre, and where do you position your games? Thanks for sharing. More about another great RPG. Sincerely, Wataya Hotel 98.
The tone I always strive for nowadays is mostly comic. Heroes should win most of the time, but sometimes bad guys get away. I enjoy mustache twirling bad guys. Yeah, I go for a light tone in terms of sort of the surrounding events of what's happening. Um, but when it comes time to a battle, I mean, I don't throw punches, so
Yeah.
I don't feel bad making you work for your victories at that point.
Yeah. That was my feeling from as a player in that game, was like interactions within the town did feel like more fun and a little whimsy to them and things like that. But there were a lot of pretty dramatic times, like during battle, or even some of the other pieces of like a war that happened in that. So yeah, I definitely can see that. Do you have thoughts on? He asked also tone of the mech genre. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
I actually am very unaware of most mech genres, actually. So between I may have played a little bit of Mech Warrior 2 back in the day. I once had a deck of, I think, BattleTech cards when every IP had a trading card game to trying to get that magic money.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I guess I've seen Pacific Rim at some point. But actually, I'm a neophyte when it comes to knowing about just mechs in general, or mech. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, I enjoyed the balance that you brought to that game, because I mean there were, like, the battles were intense. There was a time when we actually had to retreat out of the city because it was being overrun, and I remember being like, "This is not good. Like, this is not right. We are leaving all these people. but it was also like, if we leave, we're actually the reason that they're being hostile, like having to like come to grips with
Oh,
some of that stuff of like, if I get out of here, then these people are safe because they're only being attacked because I'm here, kind of thing. And that being a pretty, like, again, serious and dramatic piece. But there was also like some downtime where I can't remember exactly how those tables worked, but I was supposed to like build a rapport with the town, and I rolled poorly, and my PC like spent too long at the tavern and ended up running like naked through the town. So I mean, there's
yeah,
like, and then everybody was like, "Man, that guy's a loser." Like I lost like status with them, and I'm like, "Oh, great." So downtime didn't work out well for me, but
yeah.
it was like that goofiness of that, but also the serious. I enjoyed that piece. So, yeah, I appreciated it. Well, the second question here, thank you, Evan, for that. So this came through Instagram. This is Clyde the Bard. Clyde, if you happen to listen to this, I will also respond to you via Instagram. I have put it off, but wanted to answer that here as well. Clyde says, uh, my question is, when you use battle maps, so this is not just Lancer, this is across the board. When you use maps, and when do you use theater of the mind? So the question is, when do you use battle maps, and when do you use theater of the mind? Or are there other visual aids that you use instead of maps or theater of the mind? Just kind of talking about like the use of those things and like when's appropriate in our minds for those. You guys have thoughts on that?
I'll jump in here and start this conversation. I'm sure this is not the end of the conversation, but for me, a lot of times a battle map is when a battle is more confined to a standard kind of location. It can be in a canyon, that's fine. I can still kind of show that on a battle map. And we've had some pretty big battle maps. But I think I always tend to go theater of the mind when I really stretch either like the height element or say I have like crazy lava bursts and spewing magma and there's flight and things that would be really complicated to do on a battle map. Sometimes I will take that to a theater of the mind so that we're not encumbered by trying to count squares up and down and diagonal and like super long distances, those sorts of things. I'll tend to go back theater of the mind in those situations. But when I really kind of want to bring it to a more preciseness and it's in a smaller location, often I will use a battle map in those because I think sometimes people love the constraint of the squares. I can move this much. It makes you kind of think creatively. Whereas when you're theater of the mind, you're like, I run up to him, and you could be way too far away, but it's a little easier to fudge that stuff.
Right.
And sometimes you want that, and so I think you have to kind of play with that balance. And for me, it's typically, is it something that's easy to do in a battle map, or is it something that would be just too much trouble? So I don't know. You guys take it from there.
Yeah. Evan, you have thoughts?
Oh, definitely. As a player, I want a battle map because my initial thoughts are any of my allies in imminent danger, like they're being surrounded? Am I in imminent danger, being surrounded? How close is the nearest bad guy? How close is the bad guy that we've been wailing on the most? Is there an easy target, like a super squishy wizard in the back line, while his defending knights are off to the side, like in a separate room? These are things I need to know, or well, maybe not need, but these are all things that I want to know, and it's easier just to look at a map and know instantly the answers to these than me peppering the GM with questions.
Yeah.
But this is just for the RPG systems that I'm accustomed to, where all of this does matter when combat starts. So if it's more narrative type stuff, then Theater of the Mind works wonderfully. But when it's like a D&D or a Lancer type thing, where position matters, spell ranges matter, flanking matters, tactics matter, uh, as a player, I would like to know where everything is at just visually. So I provide that to my players because I would like that.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Yeah, I was trying to think of a percentage when I was considering this question, and I'm going to throw out 80% of the time I'm going to use a battle map, like a physical piece of that. And I think for the reason that you're saying in that, Evan, of just kind of the way the game leans from a rules standpoint. I do think, like, way back when we talked about like paying attention to your players, even like with 8 types of fun, like wanting to know, like, what does my table actually care about? And something that I would definitely consider is like, okay, does this character, like, did they spend a feat to get extra speed so that they could get across the battle map to get there? Because if they did, I don't want to take that away from them very often. Like, because I like you said, Matthew, I really like that idea of, if it's like we are now in 3 dimensions or other reasons, I think it can be more helpful to just do it in your brain rather than try to like map it all out. At least with the resources I have, but I want to be attentive to that, where it's like, okay, they have spent resources in game to be able to use tactics to get around. They've built this character like that. Like we've talked about, Matthew, you like to be mobile. Like, I wouldn't want to take that kind of thing away from you because you have speed, or other people that have done things. So that I think plays a big part into it for me. It depends the game. I think I'm guessing when Clyde's asking this, we're talking again in the D&D Pathfinder realm, not so much, but we've talked about Sentinels before. Even red markets is not really like necessarily built to be. It's not written to be like on a battle map, though often I draw a semi map so people can understand like where you're at, but it's not like square by square. It's we'll talk about the rules of red markets one day, but those are a little more theater of the mind, and than these fantasy RPGs that I feel like do have some tactics built into them. I do think, like, there are times when I don't want to get into a battle that's going to be an hour and a half, and that I may tend to go more theater of the mind and give a little more um, liberty to the players. Or if it's like a purely like narrative thing. The game I'm running now, there was a point where all the PCs went to this place, and there was kind of a vision slash history lesson of there was, back in the histories, these gods had chained a titan, and all of the PCs basically became, in this vision, they took on the form of those gods. And so I went back and forth, like, in behind the curtain for several weeks. Like, I actually started writing up like character sheets for them to play gods, and then scrapped it all because I'm like, this is insane. We're going to do this in theater of the mind, and it's even like your powers are going to be theater of the mind, where there's a goal here of, you're chaining this creature and fighting off these things. How do you do it? And we go in a round, and that was more visual in your brain than like having a battle map, because I realized that it was going to be like way too crazy and way too much. And if they're supposed to be gods of this realm, then they're probably not going to be confined to this 60-foot room, kind of thing. So that kind of thing for me is like, yeah, let's go theater of the mind. We don't need to mess with it. But I probably tend more towards the tactics of like a battle map and things like that, because of just trying to be attentive to what people want to do. And I like to use tactics, and I like to use the cool things that I've been given to as a player. So I want that for my people too. So that's my thoughts.
Right. Yeah. Typically, I'm a map guy, and I just like those visuals. But if I got like 6 guys climbing up the side of a mountain that's about to avalanche, it's more of a time thing and a circumstance. And so there may be, I'm not going to like put all the squares on the side of a mountain, but most of the time you're going to find me with squares. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I do have one thing that's kind of adjacent to this, and I'm more and more there are battles where it's like, this is going to happen. It's like, I know that this situation this is part of the story. You have to go in here and defeat the Medusa, kind of thing. And it's like, I'm going to have that map ready. But I do tend to more and more, I'm trying to not immediately go to slap down the battle map when someone enters a room, because of that idea. And we've talked about it previously, but it's like, there actually are other ways to settle encounters than just like pull out my sword or, start throwing spells kind of thing. And I think like I'm wanting to be more and more like aware of not forcing the hand of the players by immediately having a map ready. I don't always do that well, but that's something that's kind of been in my brain lately, of like, kind of hold the map back, or maybe it's my justification for why I don't come in with pre-drawn maps. It's like, I'm just going to do this in the moment, if we're in person, because I do want there to be an option of, well, maybe we can talk this out, or maybe we can sneak around it, or maybe magic, I don't know what it is, rather than just let's go toe to toe with these ogres, kind of thing. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there too in that. So thank you all for your questions, Clyde and Wataya. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, hey, we're very thankful that Evan could join us today here on Rise of the GM, talk about Lancer, talk about this different kind of game than maybe you're used to. So do check that out. Do join us next time. We're getting through the holidays now, so we're going to get back on a regular schedule. We're going to be here next week. And what are we talking about next week, Adam?
Next week, we're talking about history and mythos in world building. Like, how do we put those together?
And mythos. So you don't want to miss that. It's going to be the second, I think, in our world building series. So come back and join us then on Rise of the GM. Yeah. Thanks for being here, guys. Yeah. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks, Evan, for coming.
Thank you.